In accordance with the customs of this university, I open the ceremony with the following words. Spiritus Sancti gratia illuminet sensus et corda nostra. If your Latin is a bit rusty, it means, may the grace of the Holy Spirit enlighten our senses and our hearts. Please sit down. Good morning, everybody. We are here today to hear candidate Sogancioglu defend her thesis. And first I would like to welcome the family and everybody else who has come to attend this happy occasion. And I would also like to mention that it's a pity that your grandmother is not here and your aunt is not here. They cannot attend. I hope they are on Zoom or whatever medium you've chosen or the university has chosen. I was struck by one of the first sentences in your thesis, which means dedicated to my sister and me as children who endured hardships with courage, strength and play. And well, with everything that happens in the world, I wish everyone in the world a lot of those things to overcome the hardships that are in daily life present. So first I would like to introduce the people who have guided her through this work. That's first on my left side, it is Professor van Ginneken. He is Professor of Functional Image Analysis at this university, Radboud University. Then on the left is Dr. Sanchez Gutierrez, and she is Professor in AI and Health at Amsterdam University. And then Dr. Keelan Murphy, she is Assistant Professor in Machine Deep Learning for Medical Image Analysis. Okay, so I think we can start now. I give the floor to the candidates for the degree of doctor.
With the permission of a doctorate board, and in order to obtain the degree of doctor from Radboud University Nijmegen, I would like to defend in public my dissertation entitled Deep Learning for Clinical Practice, Enhancing Chest X-ray Diagnostics. As clear from the title, my thesis focuses on deep learning and a chest X-ray, so let me first start by introducing them. Chest X-ray is 2D, simple, yet one of the most commonly performed radiological exam. Radiologists can detect various things from them, including lung, cardiac, bone abnormalities, as well as foreign objects. They are non-invasive, cost-effective, they require only a low radiation dose, and they are very fast to acquire, which makes them an ideal tool to use as the first imaging study when patients visit the hospital. However, the volume of chest X-rays taken every day is becoming an issue worldwide. In 2020, in UK alone, 17 million radiographs were taken, which comprise around 50% of all the medical images that were taken in UK in that year. More and more studies are showing that radiologists are facing with issues like burnout, and hospitals are struggling to accommodate this workload. Automated systems in this regard can play a substantial role in helping radiologists and managing the workload. And when I talk about automated systems, here where deep learning can come into play. Deep learning is a type of a machine learning technology that has shown tremendous amount of success across various applications in the last decade. Maybe you are not familiar with what is happening behind a deep learning system, but I'm sure you have used a technology recently that there is a deep learning running behind it. Maybe you have asked a question to ChatGPT, or maybe you have used virtual assistant tools like Alexa or Siri. And these are only two applications among hundreds that shows that deep learning systems right now are being integrated into our daily life. And in this thesis, I focus specifically on chest X-ray, how we can use this powerful machine learning technology to enhance chest X-ray diagnostics. I start my thesis with a survey paper where I and my colleagues reviewed around 300 research papers that were published between 2015 to 2021. The idea of this paper is, of course, to understand as a research community what we have been doing so far, what we have learned, and what is the future directions we are going. One of the highlights from that period of research is the impact that publicly available images made in the research direction. Starting from 2017, millions of radiographs have become publicly available, which accelerated the research. However, they were also associated with some concerns around the label noise and the clinical relevance. This was due to the fact that the labels for these datasets were extracted using natural language processing techniques directly from automated reports, directly from the reports. Hence, they did contain substantial label noise, specifically for some abnormalities, and there were concerns around the clinical relevance because these labels did not contain anything about where in the image this abnormality actually occurs on a chest X-ray. In the remaining 3 chapters, I focus on 3 distinct applications we can build on a chest X-ray, using datasets that are annotated by radiologists, trying to build applications that can be clinically relevant. Let me first start with the first application on cardiomegaly. Cardiomegaly is an abnormality that indicates heart enlargement, and on a chest X-ray, it is commonly measured by so-called cardiothoracic ratio. In the case that this is larger than 0.5, it is considered to indicate the abnormality. When we look at the previous work on cardiomegaly, what we have found that majority of research try to tackle this task through classification architectures, where they would feed a chest X-ray, train the deep learning model to classify the given image as cardiomegaly or no cardiomegaly. However, if we integrate this clinical knowledge about cardiothoracic ratio, we can instead tackle this problem as a form of segmentation, where we can segment the heart and lung region, measure the cardiothoracic ratio, and afterwards we can derive whether there is a cardiomegaly on a given chest X-ray. So the idea of this study is to compare systematically these 2 different approaches, classification-based approach and the segmentation-based approach. What we found in this paper is that at the end, segmentation-based approach is the only approach that is able to achieve radiologist level of performance. It does not only require 100 times less number of training data, but also it provides an explainable output and can move us forward towards quantitative radiology reporting. On to the next application on total lung volume. When we look at the literature on deep learning for chest X-ray, what we see that almost all the works try to replicate what radiologists are already looking on a chest X-ray. Here we instead ask a different question, and we question the feasibility of measuring novel biomarker from a chest X-ray, pushing beyond visual interpretation. In this case, we have selected total lung volume, as it has been shown that it correlates well with mortality and health status. Because this is a biomarker and we cannot directly get from a chest X-ray, for our experiments, we collected a data set with patients who underwent chest radiography and a pulmonary function test, maximum 15 days apart from each other, so that we could use the total lung volume measure derived from the pulmonary function test as the corresponding label for those patients to train our deep learning models. At the end, in this paper, we have shown that the error rate we are able to achieve with the best performing deep learning solution is close to the variability we would expect in total lung volume for patients who would undergo pulmonary function tests in different days. To the best of our knowledge, this is the first study to demonstrate the feasibility of this task. And potentially it can be used to identify temporal change in total lung volume for patients with obstructive and restrictive lung diseases. On to the next application, which is, I think, one of the most important applications on chest X-ray towards early lung cancer, detecting lung nodules on chest X-ray. For this paper, we have organized a public research challenge called Note 21, where we invited people all around the world to submit their solutions. The challenge consisted of 2 different tracks, detection track and the generation track. In the detection track, the idea is to build algorithms that can detect lung nodules on a chest X-ray. And on the generation track, we ask the participants to submit algorithms that can generate fake lung nodules on a chest X-ray. After the submission was closed, we selected the best performing solutions from each track, and we performed extensive additional experiments to analyze the impact of these fake generated images on improving the performance of the detection systems. We additionally compared the best performing detection solutions to 12 different observers, which consisted of 6 radiologists and 6 radiology residents. In this paper, we show that the best performing solution is able to achieve a comparable performance to radiologists in this very important clinical task. Everything we have built in this thesis is publicly accessible, and interested people can upload a chest X-ray and can try out all of these algorithms we have built in Grand Challenge platform. Additionally, we remain the challenge open in order to support the continuous benchmarking efforts. And besides that, the thesis resulted in public data sets that consist of around 5,000 chest radiographs, and among those 1,500 of those were annotated by radiologists delineating the nodule area. Of course, everything we discuss in this thesis is a tiny step forward. However, it does exemplify how we can build applications that can potentially move us towards enhancing chest X-ray diagnostic holistically and can bring deep learning closer to the clinical practice. Having presented this summary of my dissertation, I return the floor to the rector.
Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me explain a little bit how the thesis occasion works, she has done a lot of research and that has been put into publications, and they are all in the thesis. And when the thesis is finished, it is sent to a manuscript committee. And the manuscript committee normally consists of 3 people. They read everything and they agree to start this occasion today. And so they will have some questions because they've read everything very concisely. And to add to this day, we have invited 3 experts in their field, which I will introduce when I give the word to them, to ask questions. So now we're going to have a discussion. And first I would like to invite Professor De Jong. He's a professor in radiology from the University of Utrecht, to ask some questions. Professor De Jong.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Dear candidates, I think you can be very proud of the work you did and described in the excellent thesis. I'm a very clinical radiologist, so I learned a lot reading your thesis, and congratulations with the excellent work, and also, of course, congratulations to your team. So I couldn't resist to first ask a question on the clinical applicability. So you explained 48% of all exams are chest radiographs.
Yes.
And in the Netherlands, we actually have norms. How much time a radiologist is allowed to spend on reading the X-ray, comparing it with previous, making a report and discussing it with the physician. So can you guess how much time we get
For a chest X-ray?
For a chest X-ray.
I think on average around 3-5 minutes max, right?
That's excellent, yes. Yeah, it's three minutes, so we have to work fast. But despite that, I had really time to enjoy reading your thesis. And I would like to discuss with you first chapter 4 on the measurement of the lung volume on chest radiographs. And I thought, well, she's going to start with pulmonary function lab measurements as the reference standard. So I was a bit surprised that you started with a COPD simulation study, COPD gene study. So what was the reason to take this step?
Yeah, dear opponent, the reason why we have started with these experiments to show the effect that can come from different sources that impact the model performance. Because if we directly use the pulmonary function test result, there is a variability that will come from the input where we use chest X-ray. The output is the pulmonary function test result, and patients take deep inspiration. So every time they take a deep breath in, there will be some differences in the error. The reason why we start with the simulated data sets, if we simulate chest X-ray from the CT scans and build these experiments, we can show first, is this task actually a reasonable task? Can we measure this 3D volume from this 2D image first? So that was the reason.
Okay, I can follow that. So, but there is quite a difference between standing or sitting and lying on your back. So can you explain a bit what's the influence on that first step?
Yeah. Basically that we do not expect to use the models we develop on COPD gene later on in PA images. So this is only solely done to show if this is actually even possible to measure. That is true. In fact, AP and PA are very different. Therefore, in our experiments, we did not combine them. In the last experiment we did with Ph.D, with the pulmonary function test results, we only used PA images to measure directly the total lung volume.
Yeah, I think it's also very difficult when you're lying on your back to really take a deep breath.
Yes,
So
correct.
usually it's like 500 milliliters less air in the lungs. And also the shape of your chest changes. So I was a little in doubt at that stage. And then I went to continue, and on page 87, you have figure 4.6. So I was actually very impressed and a bit surprised that in figure D you show that there's only 100 milliliter difference between the real lung volume and your method, right? Oh, that's in CT, but also on the PFT test, it's only 100 milliliters difference. Correct?
If it is with the PFD on 4.6, we see that mean absolute percentage error is around 8%, and it's around 400 milliliters error.
Oh, it's still 400 milliliters.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so that's still quite a difference with PFTs. But I thought it says the median difference is 0.109, so it's only 100 milliliters.
The median value is 100 milliliters.
Yeah, so
correct.
that's very, very close. Actually, I've never seen such good results. So I was really impressed with that. So, and then the figure above that, it shows that there still is a bias in the measurement. So can you explain why that is?
So you're asking about figure 4.6 and the figures on the top, right?
Yeah, the figure B, yeah. There you see that there's a slope actually.
Yeah, that's true. So these are the experiments we use the real data sets. So basically the labels we get as total lung volume is based on CT scan, and we use automated lung segmentation on the CT scans to calculate the total lung volume. So there are many different errors that is coming here. One is the inaccuracies how we did the labeling, which is based on automated systems. The second is coming from the different inspiration levels, because the chest X-ray is the input, the output is the CT-based lung volume, so the deep inspiration differences. So I do think this task is quite difficult, and so many sources of errors are coming into play. Therefore, we did not achieve a very good performance.
Okay. So then you also, in your presentation, you said, well, it's possible to use the method for longitudinal analysis. I would like to challenge you a little bit on that, because the variation between the measurements is like almost 1 liter, the inter-test variation. It can be a liter overestimated and a liter underestimated. Did I get it correct?
So what we have seen from the previous studies is that if the same patient gets pulmonary function test, their total lung volume can be around 8 to 10% difference. And this is what we show with the error rate. We can also achieve 8% of error. However, of course, we need future work to see, how usable that system is in the clinical practice.
Yeah. So, and do you think it needs to be improved, and like that variation in the test?
I think we cannot unfortunately improve, because if this is already coming from the pulmonary function test variability itself, and our input is chest X-ray and output is that, we can never show a better performance result than this. I think the only thing we can do as a future work is to see we can achieve this, and is this usable? Can we spot some trends in patients who have some obstructive or restrictive lung diseases?
And how would such an experiment? How would that look like? What would be a next step?
I think, for example, the first step will be testing out this algorithm with patients with restrictive lung diseases, and see if we can actually spot patterns where their total lung volume is decreasing. Is this actually giving us that picture? And that will be the first step I would look into.
Okay. How am I doing?
More than half a minute.
A half a minute?
A short question, yes.
Ooh, short question. So then I'm going to do a short question, maybe a setup. One of the goals is to get a reduction in the radiologist workload. But we also have population aging, which means more work, and we also see a huge increase in the utilization of radiological imaging because of measuring treatments effects, etc. So, do you think that we need less people in radiology in the future, the same or more?
I think what I see in the future that AI is going to be able to replace some of the tasks that radiologists are right now doing. And I think that is going to help managing the workload. It's very difficult to know in the future if we need actually more or less radiologists, but I would say we would still need the radiologists, but hopefully that AI would be able to do many of the tasks that right now radiologists are already doing.
Thank you very much for the short question and
Yes.
short answer. So the next member of the manuscript committee, that is Dr. Chiompi. He's Associate Professor of Computational Pathology at the Radboud University. Dr. Chiompi.
Yes, thank you. Dear candidate, congratulations, very nice thesis. Of course, congratulations also to your supervisors and co-supervisors. I'm happy to see that you also managed to organize a successful challenge, which I know it's it's quite a lot of work. So congrats on that also. I have some questions for you, and I would like to start with a couple of, say, more technical questions. In chapter 3, page 62, you have the definition of your held-out evaluation set for your cardiomegaly model. And I read that you started with a set of 400 cases, but in the end you used 367 cases for evaluation, and you said that you had to exclude cases where radiologists could not reliably locate the hard borders. So I was wondering what type of cases are these, and if this couldn't be seen as a way to, say, make a kind of easier evaluation set for your algorithm, because you're getting rid of the difficult cases.
Dear opponent, the reason why we have excluded these cases is that they are not clinically interesting in terms of cardiomegaly. If we cannot assess the hard borders, if radiologists cannot see the hard borders, they would very likely not report on these cases as cardiomegaly or no cardiomegaly, because very likely there is another abnormality that is obscuring the hard borders, maybe like a consolidation around that area. So these cases are not really interesting. The reason why we have decided to do that is to really have a clear scope and to identify how AI is able to differentiate between cardiomegaly cases and no cardiomegaly cases. These cases are not very relevant to report. However, I acknowledge that if we are able to put this system in the clinic right now, we do need to test what will be performance, and preferably we would want AI system to say, I'm not giving a decision in this case because I cannot see the hard border.
Yeah, right. So that's what I was thinking about. Do you have any idea how you could develop such a type of AI that says, essentially, I don't know?
Yeah, I think we can, of course, build a separate system just to do that, but maybe that will be an overkill. The other thing we can do is we have the heart and lung segmentations. We can try to maybe use some confidence score to try to see what are the hard borders and what are the confidence score. I don't know if that will perform well, but that will be the first thing maybe to check. Yeah, and the separate models could be just one way. Can we actually see the heart here, or we cannot see?
Okay, so use this information to generate some kind of uncertainty, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Another technical question also, I think it's still on the same chapter, next page actually, section 3.3.1. When you train your model, you say that essentially the cardiomegaly cases were underrepresented in your training set. So you did some kind of oversampling, which essentially you showed the same cases over and over to the model more than the negative cases. I was wondering, didn't you notice any like overfitting effect while doing this? Because essentially the same cases shown more often than others, and at some point the model might suffer from that.
Yeah, so when we are training these models, indeed, we did oversampling to make sure that the negative samples are represented in the same way as the positive samples. So I think in every time there's a batch training, the number of positive and negative samples will be same. We did not see any overfitting issue here when we look at our validation set, and the performance we're able to achieve also is very comparable to what we have seen in the literature, so we were confident that we are able to achieve a task that is expected.
Okay, so then would you suggest this as the technique to deal with unbalanced data sets like oversampling instead of maybe using other techniques like maybe modifying the loss function or something like that?
I think both of the approaches are work well, and I use both of them in many experiments. I think oversampling generally works quite well, already representing the positive in the same way. So yeah, I would say both approaches are worth trying.
Okay, thanks. So then maybe a bit of a higher level question. I like that you started your presentation highlighting the deep learning and the chest X-ray part of your title, but we're actually graying out the clinical practice part, which is what I was wondering a bit, also following up on the previous question. So you mentioned that essentially we go towards clinical practice and clinically relevant algorithms. And of course, you develop your own algorithms and you have the results of your Node 21 challenge. So my question would be, how would you define a clinically relevant AI algorithm in this context?
I think especially what I wanted to emphasize here, that when we are developing AI algorithms, and this is something also what I have seen a lot in the literature review, is that we need to keep in mind that radiologists want to use that AI algorithm and how the interaction will be. So for example, I think one example of it is the cardiomegaly actually, where we see that almost all the works try to build classification architectures and just output in the classification probability, and it is not explainable. So what will be for me a clinically relevant algorithm is using data sets that are annotated either by radiologists or from CT confirmed nodule cases, for example, using better medical images first for annotation. The second is keeping in mind that we want these systems to be used in the clinics and what type of output we want these systems to perform. And I think that is what is in my mind when I say these should be the clinically relevant algorithms, thinking about should they be explainable, should they produce segmentation or classification, and etc.
Okay, so then if you take the top algorithms of your challenge, you also show that essentially they perform on pair with radiologists. They are explainable because they show the nodules that they detect. So are those already clinically relevant and clinically usable? Can they be used in the clinic today?
I would say that I think they are already achieving a really well performance, but we did only include in these cases when we are training our model. If there were extreme abnormalities, we have excluded them from the data set. So therefore, I think the first step would be to test how these algorithms will perform in the hospital data where we do not actually exclude any images, and maybe retraining, improving that. And after that, I think they have a very huge potential to be used in clinical settings.
Okay, so they will still need some clinical validation step.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. How much time do I still have? 1 minute, okay. Then very briefly, again, chapter 3, again, about explainable algorithms. Indeed, the cardiomegaly one is a good example. You have on one hand the black box, and on the other hand, the more explainable algorithm. And people have been criticizing black boxes because they may perform well, but indeed they are not interpretable, explainable. And on the other hand, maybe explainable algorithms with more feature engineering may not perform that well. Actually, you got the best of both worlds because you did an explainable algorithm that outperforms the black box. But I was wondering, from your perspective as an AI researcher, would you be, what is your opinion about black boxes in general? Would you say we should stop looking into black boxes and just go for explainable algorithms? Or maybe is there still some value in looking into black boxes algorithms?
Just a short yes or no, please.
I would say there is still a potential, especially if we are going to train models not directly applicable like radiological findings, but we want to use pulmonary function test results, for example. We need to build classification models. Yes, I would want to invest on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So the last member of the manuscript committee, that's Dr. Güçlü Türk, and she is assistant professor of the AR department, and she works at the Radboud UMC, but also at the Donders Institute. Dr. Güçlü Türk.
Dear candidate, Ecem, I first would like to congratulate you on this really impressive thesis. All the chapters are high quality, they are all published. It's really impressive work, congratulations. Also, the challenge, organizing a challenge is a challenging task. So congratulations on that as well. And of course, your supervision team, congratulations to you as well. So maybe because the previous question was cut short and I'm also interested in that field, we can continue that discussion. So in my opinion, black box or explainable models for clinical use is not really such a, I'm not strongly opposed using not explainable models. And the reason for that is because I see parallels in how humans do their job and how black box models do their job. So people decide on things really quickly. They can have really unexplainable mechanisms to perform tasks. So how do you feel about that? What do you think about that comparison?
Mm-hmm. Dear opponent, yeah, I think that's a very good question. But when we are talking about explainable methods, I do see that their value, if we are able to build the AI algorithm that can achieve a similar level of performance, but we can do that with an explainable method, I think that is the approach that we should go towards. However, if you are going to ask me, like, there is these two approaches that is explainable, but really underperforming the one that is not explainable,
Yes,
I would go with the higher performing methods. And then really work towards it. Okay, we have this AI algorithm that is really overperforming the other approach. How we can make it in a way that the interaction with radiologists are working in an optimum setting. I think still we need to ask these questions and we need to work with radiologists for that, because at the end we want these AI systems to work with them and we want to optimize their workflow. So I would always basically choose the higher performing one, but would do my best to provide this interaction with the radiologist.
And would you anticipate some resistance towards radiologists, even if it is performing really well? For example, would you anticipate a general resistance?
From my experience, I met with some radiologists who would say they didn't care about the explainability, and I met with some of them that they really wanted some explainable solutions. I think it also depends on the task. I think explainability also provides a way of trustworthiness. If we have sometimes AI algorithm giving a decision that is so irreasonable, and however, when radiologists look at it, and then they can immediately see why this certain error was made, I think these interactions become also a bit much better and more trustworthy. So in that regard, I do see a value in that direction.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my next question is about, it has already been mentioned a few times, but I also would like you to think about this specific aspect. So your thesis is really convincing in demonstrating that there's a potential to be used for deep learning. Okay, so looking ahead, how do you envision these and similar AI-driven diagnostic tools reshaping the role of radiologists in the next 10, 20 years? So look way ahead. And do you think then the radiologists will become primary validators of AI findings, or will their expertise be directed towards more complex interpretive tasks where we wouldn't be able to get responses from AI, but that is also changing quickly, so the validity of that question is actually, questionable. So how can we best prepare the next generation of radiologists for this evolving landscape?
Okay, so how would I see radiologists in the last 10, 20 years working with these AI tools? I do think there are, from a chest X-ray perspective, I think there are a lot of potential, and I think we need to look more holistically in chest X-ray, due to the reason also we mentioned it takes 3 minutes to read a chest X-ray for a radiologist. So I don't think we can only focus on really simple tasks to automate, because there is a risk that we can't actually do much about efficiency of the radiologist. But we can do maybe a lot about how we optimize the work, that in a way they don't have to really focus on very clinical repetitive tasks, they can focus their attention more interesting cases. The second part we can make an impact is the cases that are actually challenging, like nodule detection. We know the sensitivity of the radiologists are actually not very high, or inter-reader variability is actually quite high. So can we build systems as a second reader where radiologists can look, okay, this is AI's decision, and does it make sense that there is a nodule here? And then maybe we can hope that we can increase the sensitivity of the radiologists in that that regard. So I think how I see in 10, 20 years is that there are many different components of AI tools that is used in chest X-ray reading, prioritizing chest X-ray so that the urgent cases are being read first. Helping with very difficult things like nodule, automating really simple tasks. So maybe not so much from an efficiency, but I think overall we can increase a lot about how the chest X-ray is being read right now.
Okay, then do you have any recommendations on how radiologists should prepare for the AI?
Yeah, I think this is actually slowly already coming. Actually, I have read from a recent research, my colleague Kiki van Loven, I think right now 30% of the hospitals in the Netherlands is using some type of AI tool, and the technology is changing. We are changing. We are starting to use ChatGPT. We are becoming more reliant on that. I think at the end, we are going to possibly in the future integrate some more deep learning knowledge, maybe in the medical training, or there will be some training in the hospitals for radiologists to see how these both things can work together. So yeah, I think this will slowly start to be adaptable.
Okay, thank you. My next question is a bit more technical. So in chapter 5, you explore the impacts of generated nodule data on detection performance. And the results show that there is a benefit for combining data from multiple generators. What this tells me is that the diversity of generated nodules seems to be important, and it can be a limiting factor. So, have you considered exploring more advanced generative models to achieve better performance there? And, for example, like diffusion models or variational autoencoders, which has been shown to generate more diverse and realistic images?
A very short answer, please.
Oh.
Yes.
Got the question short, sorry.
I think actually that this is one of the most interesting results of the paper, in my opinion, and I think that there is so much potential on exploring different generative models and to see how they can help in improving the performance of detection systems.
Maybe for discussion at the reception later. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this concludes the discussion with the members of the manuscript committee, but we have invited some further experts in the field. And first we travel to Maastricht, where we have Professor Lambin, who is joining us from there. And he's a professor in radiotherapy, and he is an expert in medical image analysis. Professor Lambin, your questions, please.
Yes, first, thank you very much for the invitation. Congratulations, dear candidate, for this excellent thesis, very straightforward, beautiful data, good methodology. And actually, I agree with your last statement that I found the results in chapter 5 fascinating when you show that by using different generators, but also different AI, you get better results. For example, the top AI, the top 3, they use between 6 and 33 different algorithms put together with ensemble learning. So that's quite interesting because we are moving away from this magic superpower AI to actually a team of AI. It makes me think a little bit like a football team where you have, defenders, attackers, midfields, people from different countries, different skills. So my question, I think that's a very important discovery, even though it has been also pointed out by other groups. So it's confirming what is already published. But how do you think we should manage that? Should we just, multiply the number of algorithms, add them together, and then test them with different combination? Or should we try to drive that process? Because, the generator is quite obvious because you want diversity. So I would like to hear your thoughts about that.
Dear opponent, so the question is about the detection part where we combine multiple detection methods together, right?
Well, both actually, because you find for generation,
Yes.
but also for detection, you find more or less the same things, that when you add different algorithms together, you had a better performance. So my question is more, how do we manage that theme?
So basically, when we look at actually other challenges as well that has been done in medical data, we also see that ensemble methods, combining multiple different detection methods or generation methods that work better generally than using a single detection method. This is also what we have seen indeed this study. I think this is a little bit related, of course, if we are going to use an AI system that consists of multiple different architectures, and we are going to integrate it at the end to the clinical practice, they are going to be huge in size. Is this a problem? Is this manageable? There are also other machine learning techniques, for example, knowledge distillation, where we can learn from these ensemble approaches, try to build a model that is more simple, that can possibly learn some similar, still can achieve a similar level of performance, but they are smaller in size. There is a research direction in that, so maybe it might be also useful if these are become so computationally heavy.
For example, do you think that we should put only together models which have a similar performance? Because I can imagine that if you had a very weak link in the team, that could actually have a negative effect. Is that a conditions to do ensemble learning? Do you pre-select your model or not?
Yeah, I think when we do the ensemble model, generally we see that if we combine different architectures, really different way of looking at the input, different preprocessing, they might work actually better because there will be more variability in the output that they predict. So this combination can actually make it a more stronger.
Okay, but do they need a similar performance, all those models?
I think
Yeah, go ahead.
I think, yes, we would need to combine models that achieve quite high performance. I don't see much value on when one system is achieving 90% AUC score and other one is 70%. I don't think we should combine them. I think we should combine really high performance achieving systems.
Thank you. So another question, what we really want is not only detect nodules, but also classify them as potentially malignant or not, right? So we know that most of those lung cancer is mainly caused by smoking, and smoking has other effect on the thorax, COPD, calcification in the heart. So do you see a benefit for classification to also try to integrate this other imaging information, which is not necessarily related to the nodule?
I think this is actually a very promising direction as a future research. I do see a lot of value, and I think there are more studies recently that try to do that, combining different features, maybe different test results that we know. And I think trying to replicate a little bit and contextualize what radiologists are already looking at them and trying to integrate this knowledge when we are building AI systems as well. So yes, I do see a lot of value in integrating different knowledge and not only imaging alone.
Okay. And then a last question. There was a big fuss about foundation models. And I see that there are quite a few published open source foundation models for X-rays of the thorax. So, and foundation model was not at all mentioned in your thesis when I use a search. So why is that? Do you see any features there, or what are your thoughts about pre-trained foundation models?
So the reason why foundation models was not actually mentioned in my thesis, the first paper was shown actually when I already finished my last paper about foundation models. I do see that actually in the last few years, indeed, there are a lot of studies showing that. And they do have different potential. And I think one thing that is that they are able to build systems that from millions and billions of images and learning really these invariant feature representations that can be generic when they're applied to different hospital data possibly. So I think that is indeed a very interesting direction.
Okay, thank you very much. I give the word back to the prorector.
Thank you very much. So the next opponent was working at the Radboud University. It's Dr. Schalekamp, and he is a thoracic radiologist. Dr. Schalekamp, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear candidate. I also would like to congratulate you on your work. Another nice thesis on chest X-rays, and also like to congratulate your supervising team. As a radiologist, and as a thoracic radiologist, I'm very happy to see a lot of research is going on chest X-rays and also trying to make our work easier. But as you have shown in chapter 2, there are a lot of research being doing. There are a lot of products on the market. But why do researchers try to pick the most difficult exam in radiology to automate, and why did you pick it?
Why, dear opponent, the question is why did I pick chest X-ray to
Yeah,
automate?
because it's such a difficult exam.
The reason I think why we picked chest X-ray is also because of the volume of chest X-ray. That if we compare to other medical imaging, that we see from other studies, right? 50% of the medical images are actually coming from a chest X-ray. There is a huge volume, and I think so much potential we can gain because we have this information already. There are so many chest X-rays. Radiologists are reading them. How we can actually even improve this through an AI system.
But you're maybe also familiar that when you show a chest X-ray to a radiologist, or you show it to 10 radiologists, you get 10 different answers. Is that something that is a problem for AI, or is it making it easier because there's also always an answer from a radiologist that fits the AI solution, right?
That's true. I think when we are looking at the cardiomegaly case, for example, it is more straightforward. Radiologists agree with each other more. So in this case, for example, that we can know that if we only use a single radiologist, we know we can develop a system that is trustable. If we pick another examples like nodule, then we know that there is an issue with the inter-reader variability. Then I think the most basic approach would be to use maybe CT scans to have a confirmed nodule in order to improve the annotation process.
Yeah, it's nice that you bring up the cardiomegaly chapter. In chapter 3, you show these graphs on page 71 about the performance of the segmentation method you use and the classification method, and the number of training cases needed for each method. And with only 100 training cases in the segmentation method, you outperform the classification method, which is trained with 62,000 cases. So why is that happening, you think?
I think the reason why this is happening, if we are building a segmentation-based method, basically we are annotating every pixel in an image. It is easier to learn from an annotations where we segment the heart area as compared to a classification architecture, and the only thing that they see is that whether there is a cardiomegaly or not, 0 and 1. So they require much more number of images to figure out what is actually 1, which is cardiomegaly, and what is 0, which is no cardiomegaly.
And I also saw that these training cases of the classification method are labeled by natural language processing methods. Do you believe that's a good idea to label these cases in such a way? Or?
The reason why we have selected this, indeed these are coming from a public data set which were labeled using natural language processing techniques. However, there were some follow-up papers that show that the label noise in cardiomegaly is much smaller compared to any other abnormalities. So basically people take a look at these annotations and validate how well they are. So we see much less noise here, and there is a random noise, and we do not expect the model that they will decrease their performance remarkably just because of a very little noise. Actually, we do not expect that the performance will be decreasing.
Yeah, I agree with that. But because it's also difficult to translate a radiological report into a classification, I guess. Is there something that we could do as radiologists to improve this process in clinical practice?
I think how this process can be improved through radiology reports is having a more structured radiology report. Because sometimes we see that every radiologist write in their own way, and it's then using a natural language processing techniques, then there are more cases that it fails. But if we have a more structured reporting, then it might be much easier for also algorithms like this to retrieve these labels.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, but that seems to be very difficult in our practice because many of our radiologists would like to make nice stories about the image, and we can tune our words into something that is more likely this or more likely that, so it's difficult to make a black or white decision. I had another question about chapter 5, in which you try to detect lung nodules. You made a decision to exclude nodules that were not visible in the chest X-rays. Why did you do that? Because it would be so nice if a system was able to see things that maybe we are not seeing it, right?
Yeah, True. The reason why we have excluded these cases is we really wanted to have a clear definition of the line nodule that is only CT-confirmed nodule. And when we are doing the annotation process, we provided the radiologist CT scans as well. We provided where the nodule is actually appearing on the CT scan. If they still cannot see on a chest X-ray, even looking at the same patients, they can still not see on a chest X-ray. It might also because of maybe it was not a really nodule, but an infection, or it disappears. We wanted to keep the specificity of the algorithm very clear. That was the reason why we have excluded those cases.
Yeah, for this purpose, I understand it. But wouldn't it be nice to try to train an AI system that might be able to see abnormalities that we cannot see? So we have a CT reference, and we just try to train the model to find this nodule?
Yes, I think if we have, for example, maybe pathologically confirmed nodules and we train with that, I think that's a good direction. Yes, I do agree that then we can use a chest X-ray. We know the nodules were pathologically confirmed at the end, and these are the nodule cases. That will be a really interesting one.
Yeah, I would totally agree. But then we get to another problem in practice, right? So the radiologist gets a chest X-ray and an output of an AI system that circles something in the image and says something's there, but I can see it. So what do I do now?
That's a very good question, and I think what will happen is that at the end, if we build these systems, of course, that we want this AI system also to show where is the location of the nodule. If you cannot see, if a radiologist cannot see, I think maybe it can be mentioned in the reportings, or also we are going to see as well about the performance of these AI systems, right? We will know, for example, how many of the cases that AI system actually says is nodule, how many of those are actually nodule. So maybe it is worth still investigating and still taking some action on that, depending on these results.
Yeah, but then we're probably at a stage that the total chest X-ray is completely automated, so that the human eye does not add something to that. So maybe. I have one last question, if there's time, also about the clinical path we should do. In your discussion, you mentioned all important items that should be present for research in chest X-rays, like labeling, good data sets. So as a next step to improve the performance of AI systems for chest X-rays, should we invest in larger data sets or data sets with better labeling? Should we include clinical information or just other imaging data? What's the best things to do next?
I think for me the most interesting project would be actually collecting a really large data sets, but annotating them maybe from CT-based annotations, or using a better imaging modalities to really annotate them and try to build systems that are able to predict what we see in a better medical imaging or in a better test. And I do agree that also integrating different test results, for example, I don't know, blood tests, whatever the actually radiologists are already seeing as a context, is very important when they are also reading a chest X-ray. So the next thing also would be how we can integrate this different knowledge in the clinical context in a way that radiologists are also seeing, and an AI system can also see them and make a prediction based on this.
Yeah, I think the systems are now, if you train them for a specific task, they're very good. But I think it should be time to add the more easy stuff from the clinical practice that we use to beat AI systems. So, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So, the next member of the opposition, that's Dr. Venkatesh. He's working at the Radboud University, and he's expert in deep learning for medical image analysis. Dr. Venkatesh.
Dear candidate, first of all, I want to congratulate you on this really excellent thesis. I was not planning to read the entire thesis, but I ended up reading it anyway because it was so well written. I also want to congratulate your manuscript committee, the supervision team, and also your family members, and of course your lovely dogs, who I wish I could congratulate in person, but maybe later. When I read the thesis, something that I noticed was that you developed 3 systems and a review paper, and among these 3 systems, 2 systems reach human-level performance, And I don't think this would have been possible 10 years ago, but now it is. And I noticed that you mentioned this in your chapter 5 on the Note 21 paper, that the advances in AI in the last decade allow researchers to quickly develop systems that reach radiologist level performance. Do you think this advance was easier during your PhD? Did you see that that it became easier to develop these systems towards the end of your PhD?
Dear opponent, I think when I started, the deep learning started to become really very popular, and then people started to apply, so we did not immediately see the impact of that. But I think already after a year or so, we started to see a really very high performance achieving AI systems in this task. I think on chest X-ray right now, in many tasks that we are able to achieve really high performance levels, and that is also valid for other things like on CT scans, pathology images, and etc. So I think this was actually quite fast. Once the deep learning was already there, we had to start collecting our data set and performing these experiments.
Do you also see that when it comes to the task of reducing the workload of radiologists, that we want a team of AI systems like the football team that was referenced to? So where are we now in terms of automating the generation of a report with the AI systems that we have now, and what more needs to be done?
Mm-hmm. I think specifically for chest X-ray, if we compare it to different imaging models, I think it's different, because on CT scan, I think it can take up to 30, 45 minutes maybe reading a CT scan. In chest X-ray, it is 3 minutes. So it is not so much we can do in terms of an efficiency here. And I think we really need to think about more holistically what different components can work together and make this chest X-ray reading better. I think we do achieve quite good performance in several applications, but we do need more studies actually and more products out there showing this is actually improving. And chest X-ray, it's more difficult to put a single product. We need, I think, many things coming together for this improvement.
I think that raises an interesting question in my mind. Do you think then that we should take, in the future, that we should take chest X-ray reading out of the radiology department?
I don't think we should do that. I think there are still tasks that radiologists would need to do, and we cannot replace and replicate all the tasks that radiologists can do. But I do really hope that we can use AI systems that are able to do so many tasks in a really high-performing level that overall that the combination with radiologists and AI systems can achieve an optimum performance.
I have another question about, in the same chapter, you organized a really successful challenge, which also proved to be one of the benchmarks when algorithm submission challenges were being set up. And I think that's super important for reproducible science, that participants from all over the world can encapsulate their solutions in Docker containers and enable you to have a fair and reproducible comparison. But for the challenge, you released your dataset with a license which was CC by non-commercial and non-derivative. Could you explain why you chose the non-derivative license?
So the reason for that is for the dataset we have used publicly available datasets. We re-annotated them. So because the dataset origin is coming from this public dataset, we cannot publish them with a license that they did not do. So the license was chosen based on what we can actually do, based on the license that they have provided. So that was the only reason.
Would you consider your work as a derivative work of this dataset?
I think everything we do in research is derivative of what other people's work.
Yeah, this is a relatively new choice that researchers have to make, right? Like when we release datasets, what license do we attach? And in my impression, I think we should even drop the requirement to have the non-commercial license as the aspect of the license as well, because when we look at trying to build systems that have an impact in clinical practice, we should also, of course, release datasets that would allow the implementation of solutions that would go through regulatory practice so that radiologists can reliably rely on these systems. Would you agree with the same?
I do agree. I think that there's a lot of potential also for the companies to be able to use these data sets, build AI systems. And that is also good for us because everything we have worked on, we can see through these companies that they are being implemented and helping radiologists.
I had another question about a rather technical question about the design choices in your pre-processing steps for this dataset, because you resized all the images to 1024 by 1024 matrix. Do you think it would have an impact on estimating the size of lung nodules if a system were to be developed on these datasets?
So your question is that because we are not directly estimating, we are locating the lung nodule, so it doesn't have to be really very precise, but it just have to locate it. I think 1024 is also chosen because in the public data sets, they provide it in that dimension, so we couldn't basically perform experiments with the higher dimensional data. However, we see in multiple applications that this actually works quite well. I think the only way that maybe it can be improved actually in nodule because they are really small. So using a larger size might actually allow to detect cases that are very subtle. However, we still were able to build a really high-performing AI solution. So, yeah.
And it could also have an impact on the output size, right? So if everything is resized to the same size, then the measurement has to be post-processed, knowing what the original size was.
Exactly.
Maybe time for one final question?
Very short. Extremely short question.
Well, I hope that the systems are in place to have a complete implementation. Maybe if you could give a percentage as to where we are to full automation, what would that be?
A question an answer in 1 second.
70% we are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The defense is hereby concluded. I give the floor once again to the candidate.
Having defended my dissertation to the best of my ability, I would like to thank you, Rector, and you, my supervisor and co-supervisor, and all who have honored this ceremony with their presence.
The doctoral examination board retreats for its deliberations.
Ja, die mag, ik heb al met hem overlegd, die mag wat mij.
Actually included in the review, nor the summarising of those 296 papers in tabular form. If you felt frustration, you left it outside the meetings and remained always calm and methodical in your approach to the tasks at hand. This same calm demeanour was evident in all of the projects that you undertook and the papers that you wrote. Even the most annoying reviewer comments on your papers didn't faze you, and your responses to them were always polite and thorough, an approach that served you well. In Chapter 5 of your thesis, you detail the Node 21 challenge, which you organised towards the end of your PhD. As everyone who has ever organised a challenge finds out, there is a great deal of hidden work involved. Planning the challenge structure, data mining and preparation, coding for the Grand Challenge platform, and dealing with the participants and their many queries are just a few of the tasks that come to mind. At the time that you started your current position at Adyen, you had not yet completed the writing of the paper that follows all of those tasks. Writing the paper also involved collaboration with many researchers that you had never met, running their software or attempting to, and your patience was tested like never before by the many tedious experiments which could run for days and then fail based on tedious errors from these collaborators. In that time, as well as starting a new job, you had also moved to a new home in Amsterdam, and with many competing demands on your time, it would not have been surprising that the Node 21 paper might fall to the bottom of the list. In what must have been a most stressful and difficult time for you, I commend you that you still did not bring frustration or irritation of any sort to our meetings about the paper, and in spite of all the difficulties, you made your way through the many experiments and the writing, and took all suggestions on board graciously. The completed paper was quickly accepted at IEEE Transactions on Medical Imaging, a just reward for your patience. In your personal life, I have already mentioned your love of dogs, but of course even more important is your love of your family. Your thesis acknowledgements describe beautifully the close-knit relationships that we always heard of, with your husband Jesus, of course, but also with your twin sister Ecem, her husband, and of course their dog also. And we should mention also your family in Turkey who could not be here today. The special bonds that you share together were always evident and no doubt will continue to sustain you as you embark on this next chapter of your life. Happily, a chapter that you will not need to submit to a journal or to defend in public. I have no doubt that you can achieve whatever you put your mind to in your next ventures, but I hope that you will first take some time to relax and enjoy your achievement and your new title. All that remains is for me to congratulate you and your family once more, Ecem, and I sincerely wish you every success and happiness in your future.
Thank you. I also would like to congratulate you on behalf of the university with this great title, and especially congratulate your family. You now have someone, maybe one more, with a Ph.D. title in the family. So many congratulations with that. And before we conclude, I would like to give the opportunity to Professor Lambin to also speak to the doctor. Professor Lambin.
So, dear candidate, congratulations for your excellent work. And during the deliberation, there were a lot of compliments flying from all directions, so you can be very proud. And for me, the word which come to my mind is robustness and trustworthy. Your work is very solid, and I enjoy this moment. Where very few moments like that in a professional life. That's my advice, and I wish you good luck in your future professional careers.
We have now come to the conclusion of this ceremony, and I ask you all to stand. We close with the following words. Gratias tibi agimus omnipotens Deus pro omnibus beneficiis tuis, qui vivis et regnas per omnia saecula saeculorum.